5 retirement mistakes that could cost you thousands. There's something eating your retirement right now, quietly, while you're going about your life, paying your bills, doing everything you think you're supposed to be doing. Something is chewing through the future you're trying to build. And the worst part? Most people don't even know it's there until it's already done serious damage. And it's not the stock market. It's not inflation. It's not some external force you have no control over. It's a handful of completely avoidable mistakes. Decisions, or non-decisions, that seem harmless in the moment, that feel totally reasonable when you're making them, but compound quietly in the background over years and decades, until one day you sit down to actually look at your retirement picture and realize something has been eating away at it the entire time. Here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. These aren't exotic, complicated mistakes that only financially reckless people make. These are mistakes that smart, responsible, well-intentioned people make constantly, because nobody sat them down and said, hey, this specific thing you're doing or not doing right now is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars by the time you retire. Nobody says that, so people just keep doing it. My name is Jack, and honestly, I've spent more time than is probably healthy studying the gap between people who retire comfortably and people who arrive at retirement age feeling behind and anxious and not quite sure how it happened, especially when they worked hard their whole lives and did a lot of things right. And what I keep finding is that it almost always comes back to the same handful of mistakes. Not dozens of them, just a few, repeating across millions of people's financial lives, quietly doing damage the whole way. So today we're going to name them, all 5, clearly and honestly, because the moment you can see what's eating your retirement, you can stop it. Let's get into it. Mistake 1. Delaying savings, the one that costs more than all the others combined. Okay, if there is one mistake on this entire list that I want you to feel in your chest, really feel, not just understand intellectually, it's this one. Starting late, I know. You've heard this before. Start early, time in the market, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it so many times it's lost its punch. So let me try to give it its punch back with a real concrete comparison that I think actually lands differently than the generic version. Meet 2 people. Let's call them Sarah and Mike. Sarah starts investing at 25. She puts $300 a month into a diversified index fund, earning an average of 8% annually. She does this for 10 years. Just 10 years. And then life gets complicated. She stops contributing at 35. Not another dollar goes in. She just leaves what she built and lets it sit. Mike doesn't start until 35. He also invests $300 a month at 8%. But unlike Sarah, he keeps going all the way to 65. 30 straight years of consistent contributions. Never misses a month. By age 65, who has more money? Sarah. By a significant margin, Sarah ends up with roughly $520,000. Mike ends up with around $440,000. Mike invested for 30 years. Sarah invested for 10. Mike put in 3 times as much money in total contributions. And Sarah still wins. That's not a trick. That's compound interest. Those 10 years between 25 and 35, the early years, are worth more than the 30 years between 35 and 65. Because compounding multiplies what's already there. The bigger the base, the bigger the multiplier. Every year you delay starting, or delay increasing your contributions, is not just a year of missed growth. It's a year of missing the compounding of that growth and the compounding of the compounding of that growth. The cost of waiting isn't linear, it's exponential. And here's the thing that makes this mistake so insidious. It doesn't feel like a mistake when you're making it. At 25 or 28, retirement feels abstract and distant. There's always a reason to wait. Student loans, a car payment, rent is high right now, I'll start for real once I get settled. And each of those reasons feels legitimate in isolation. But the math doesn't care about the reasons. The fix is simple and unsexy. Start now. Not a perfect amount. Not once you have it all figured out. Now, even $100 a month at 24 beats $500 a month at 34 mathematically. Get the clock started. Increase contributions as your income grows. But start. Mistake 2. Early withdrawal. The retirement account raid that haunts people for decades. Okay, this one is genuinely painful to talk about because it's a mistake that comes from a genuinely hard place, from real financial pressure, real emergencies, real moments where someone needed money and the retirement account was sitting right there. And so they took it. An early withdrawal from a traditional 401k or IRA, meaning before age 59 and a half, comes with a 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of the income taxes you owe on the amount. So if you're in the 22% federal tax bracket and you pull $20,000 from your 401k early, you're immediately losing 32 cents of every dollar to taxes and penalties. You walked out with $20,000 and handed $6,400 to the government on the spot. That's painful enough. But it's actually not the most expensive part. The most expensive part is the compounding you permanently lose. That $20,000 you withdrew, if left alone at 8% for 25 years, would have become roughly $137,000. You didn't just lose $20,000, you lost $137,000 in future retirement wealth. And you paid $6,400 for the privilege of doing it. Now, I want to be real here. Sometimes people have no choice. True emergencies happen. Medical crises, job loss, situations where the retirement account is genuinely the last resort. And if it's truly the last resort, you take it and you move on. But far too often, and this is the hard truth, retirement accounts get rated for things that aren't genuine last resorts. A vacation, a new car, a home renovation that could have waited, a purchase that felt urgent in the moment and was largely forgotten 2 years later. The fix: before you ever touch a retirement account early, ask yourself honestly, is there any other way? Have I looked at every other option? Because the true cost of an early withdrawal isn't the number you see on the screen. It's the compounded future wealth that disappears permanently the moment you take it. If you have an emergency, your emergency fund should be the first line of defense, which is exactly why having one matters so much. The retirement account is for retirement, not for emergencies that could have been covered by a properly built cash cushion. Mistake 3. Ignoring inflation. The invisible bug that never stops eating. This one is sneaky, really sneaky, because it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show up as a line item on your account statement. It just quietly, persistently erodes the purchasing power of your money, year after year, until one day you realize that the retirement income you planned for 20 years ago doesn't actually buy what you thought it would. Inflation is running at somewhere around 2 to 3% per year in a stable environment, though recent years have reminded everyone that it can spike dramatically higher. At 3% annual inflation, the purchasing power of a dollar gets cut in half in about 24 years. Meaning if you're 40 years old today and you think $5,000 a month will be plenty to live on in retirement, by the time you're 65, that $5,000 has the purchasing power of about $2,500 in today's dollars. You need twice as much as you think you need, just because of inflation. And here's where it gets particularly dangerous. A lot of people, especially conservative savers, keep too much of their retirement savings in cash. Savings accounts, CDs, money market funds, things that feel safe. And while those accounts are earning 4 or 5% right now, which feels good, if inflation is running at 3%, your real return is only 1 to 2%. You're technically growing but barely keeping pace. Over 25 years of retirement, a portfolio that grows at 2% real returns runs out dramatically faster than one growing at 6 or 7% real returns. The gap between those outcomes, in total lifetime spending, can be in the millions. The fix: your retirement portfolio needs meaningful exposure to assets that outpace inflation over the long term. Historically, that means equities, stocks, broadly diversified index funds, which have averaged 7 to 8% real returns above inflation over long periods. Being too conservative too early in retirement planning is genuinely one of the most dangerous financial positions you can put yourself in, because safe-feeling low-return investments quietly let inflation eat your purchasing power alive over decades. Think of inflation like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it on Monday. You barely notice it by Wednesday. But by the weekend, you're riding on a flat and wondering how it happened. The leak was always there. You just weren't watching for it. 4. The mid-video check. You're closer to the fix than you think. Real quick, if you've made it this far and some of these are hitting a little close to home, first, that's okay. That's actually a good sign. Recognizing a mistake is the entire first step to stopping it. Most people never get this far in the conversation with themselves about their own retirement. And if this kind of content is genuinely useful to you, if it's the kind of thing you want to keep seeing, a subscription means a lot to this channel. It takes 2 seconds, it costs you nothing, and it's how we keep making videos exactly like this one. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and let's finish the list. Because mistakes 4 and 5? Honestly, these might be the most common ones of all. Mistake 4. Overspending. Lifestyle inflation that silently steals your future. Here's the mistake that almost never feels like a mistake when you're making it. You get a raise, a good one, maybe 15 or 20%. You feel the relief of a little more breathing room. And then, almost automatically, without any real deliberate decision-making, the spending adjusts upward to meet the new income. The nicer apartment, the car upgrade, more dining out, better vacations. And 6 months later, the raise has completely disappeared into the lifestyle. And the investment contributions haven't moved at all. That is lifestyle inflation. And it is one of the most consistent wealth killers in personal finance, specifically because it happens gradually, automatically, and in ways that feel completely justified in the moment. Here's the math that makes this real. Say you're earning $75,000 and investing $500 a month, about 8% of your income. You get a raise to $90,000. Your spending creeps up to absorb most of it, and you bump investments to $600 a month. But if instead, at the moment of that raise, you had committed to keeping your lifestyle at $75,000 and directing the extra $1,250 a month entirely into investments, you'd be investing $1,750 a month instead of $600. At 8% returns over 25 years, $600 a month becomes roughly $570,000. That same $1,750 a month becomes $1.66 million. The lifestyle choice you barely noticed making, the quiet drift upward into a more expensive life, cost you over $1 million in retirement wealth. Not because of any single dramatic decision, because of dozens of small, comfortable, invisible ones. The fix isn't deprivation, it's intentionality. Every time income increases, from a raise, a bonus, a side income, any source, decide in advance what percentage goes to lifestyle and what percentage goes directly to investments before the lifestyle has a chance to claim it. A simple rule like 50% of every raise gets invested immediately is enough to change the trajectory dramatically. You still get to enjoy the raise, and your future self gets half of it too. Mistake 5. No diversification. Putting too much faith in too few things. Okay, last one. And this is the mistake that tends to feel the least urgent right up until the moment it becomes a genuine emergency. No diversification, or not enough of it. There are a few versions of this mistake, and they're all worth naming, because they look different on the surface but share the same core problem. Too much concentration in too few things. Version 1. Too much company stock. This is incredibly common among people who work for companies that offer stock as part of compensation or a 401k match. Over time, their retirement account becomes heavily weighted toward their employer's stock, which feels fine. You know the company, you believe in it, it's been doing well. Until it isn't. Enron employees had 60% of their 401k in Enron stock. WorldCom employees had similar concentrations. When those companies collapsed, the stock didn't just go down, it went to zero. And retirement savings built over decades evaporated with it. Version 2. Too heavily weighted toward one asset class. All stocks, no bonds, no real estate, no alternatives, especially dangerous in the final decade before retirement, when a severe market crash without a buffer can force you to retire into a damaged portfolio. On the other end, all bonds, all cash, nothing with real growth potential, is the version that lets inflation quietly eat everything over 20 years. Version 3. Geographic concentration. only investing in U.S. companies when international diversification historically smooths returns and captures growth in markets that sometimes outperform domestic ones. The beautiful thing about diversification is that it's not complicated to fix. A single broad index fund, like a total world stock market fund, gives you thousands of companies across dozens of countries in one click. Add a bond index fund and a real estate index fund, and you've got genuinely solid diversification with 3 holdings and almost zero ongoing management. Diversification doesn't maximize returns in any single good year. That's not the point. The point is that it dramatically reduces the risk of catastrophic loss, of one company, one sector, one country's bad run, wiping out a decade of careful saving. It's the financial equivalent of not putting every egg in one basket. Cliché because it's true, and more important than most people realize until the moment they wish they'd done it. The real cost. What these 5 mistakes add up to. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the full picture, because I think it's important to understand that these 5 mistakes don't just affect your retirement in isolation. They compound on each other, sometimes literally. Someone who started investing 5 years late lost maybe $200,000 to $300,000 in compounding, made 1 or 2 early withdrawals over the years, lost another $100,000 to $150,000 in future wealth, kept too much in low-return accounts, lost another $150,000 to inflation erosion, let lifestyle inflation absorb several raises, missed another $300,000 to $500,000 in investment contributions, and held too little diversification, taking a big hit in 1 or 2 market events, knocked off another chunk. Add those up, and you're looking at a retirement that's $800,000 to $1.2 million smaller than it should have been. Not because of bad luck, not because the market betrayed you, because of 5 avoidable, fixable, completely human mistakes that quietly ate away at the whole thing over decades. The good news, and this is the part I really want you to hear, every single one of these mistakes is stoppable. Right now, today, you can't get back the years you didn't start investing, but you can start today. You can stop the early withdrawals, you can reposition for inflation protection, you can set an automatic rule that captures the next raise before lifestyle inflation claims it. You can add a single diversified index fund and fix the concentration problem in 15 minutes. None of the fixes are complicated. None of them require a financial advisor or a special account or anything other than a clear decision and the willingness to follow through on it. Conclusion. Stop the bugs before they eat everything. So here's where we land. Your retirement is being eaten by 5 bugs. Delaying savings, the one that costs the most because compound interest waits for no one. Early withdrawal, the one that feels like a small hit and turns out to be a massive one once you see the compounding you permanently lost. Ignoring inflation, the slow, invisible leak that makes your carefully planned retirement income worth far less than you expected. Lifestyle inflation, the comfortable, painless drift into spending that swallows raises whole and leaves your investment contributions frozen. And lack of diversification, the quiet concentration risk that feels fine right up until it very suddenly isn't. These aren't dramatic financial disasters. They don't announce themselves. They creep in, one small decision at a time, and they compound in the background for years while life keeps moving. But here's the thing. You just named all 5 of them. You can see them now. And bugs you can see, bugs you know to look for, are bugs you can actually deal with. The retirement you're building deserves to get there intact. Not half-eaten by avoidable mistakes that nobody bothered to warn you about. Consider yourself warned. Now go fix it. I'll see you in the next one. Subscribe, please, guys.